Ladies, gentlemen, and knights of the Nerd World Order, this is the Nerd World Order spoiler-free review of AD ASTRA. Now, as far as space science fiction epics go, this movie was actually very well anticipated. It had a great trailer, and a lot of people were on the fence of whether or not they were going to watch it. So let me give you my opinion and tell you whether or not you should go check out Brad Pitt's AD ASTRA. Now, as a nerd, there are four things that we look for in order to determine if a movie's going to be good or not. First thing is the acting, then the action, the special effects, and then finally, the story. You put them all together, you get one nerd flag for each one for a possible 4 nerd flags. So, let's talk AD ASTRA. Now, as far as acting goes, you have Brad Pitt, you have Liv Tyler, and you have Tommy Lee Jones. Therefore, it's given that you're going to have one very enthusiastic nerd flag. And when it comes to the action, the acting, and by the way, and Donald Sutherland, so automatic nerd flag. Clearly, this movie had some great acting. Now, the standout in this movie is going to be Brad Pitt. He carried the movie because this movie has a lot of very quiet, isolated scenes, and he does a great job without being over dramatic, keeping you involved. In fact, as I watched the movie, I had to think back to the last movie that I watched with Brad Pitt, which was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he played a very different character, sort of an action hero, a stuntman. And that reminded me of the acting range of Brad Pitt. He did a phenomenal job in this movie. Now, Liv Tyler was great. Tommy Lee Jones was Tommy Lee Jones. I think there are some characters or some actors that tend to have that same tempo and character in every movie. I think Tommy Lee Jones falls into that role or that genre, unfortunately. He's kind of the same guy in every movie. He might be a little comedic in some, a little bit more serious in others, but he's the same guy. Brad Pitt carried the movie. Liv Tyler didn't have very much in the movie, but she was great when she was in the movie. Overall, Brad Pitt delivers one very enthusiastic nerd flag for AD ASTRA. Let's move on to the action. Now, this movie did have some great action scenes. You saw most of them in the trailer. But let me tell you, the action is great, but this is a very, very, very slow movie. Now, the pace in this movie was pretty slow. A lot of times, you thought to yourself, can I go to the bathroom? And if I go to the bathroom, would I miss anything? You know how sometimes you just don't, think like, I'm going to miss something if I get up, if I go get a drink, or if I get something to eat, or if I go to the bathroom. Not this movie. The pace was really slow. But let's stop and think about it. Gravity with Sandra Bullock, or if we think about Space 2001, one of the most epic space movies of all time, or even the most boring movie that nerds won't admit is boring, which is Star Trek. The very first Star Trek. Oh my gosh, that Star Trek movie was so boring. Star Trek, the motion picture, was boring. You guys gotta admit it. Now, of course, there are really exciting space movies, but for the most part, space movies, if they're dramas, tend to have a very slow pace because they speak to the isolation and the pace of life in space. So they do tend to be very slow. So keeping that in mind, there were great action scenes in this movie, but I would be remiss if I were to tell anybody watching this spoiler-free review that this movie had good action, because that's not what you're going in for. That's not what you should expect. That's not what you get from a great space drama. Therefore, I can't give any nerd flags for the action in AD ASTRA, but that's not what they were going for. And if you want an action movie, a good space action movie, maybe check out the Star Wars franchise, maybe check out some of the later Star Trek movies, but clearly this is not the movie for action. No nerd flags for AD ASTRA in the action, but it's not a bad thing. Now, there were great action moments, exciting stuff, but overall, this is a very slow movie. Let's get on to special effects. Special effects were amazing. It's one of those movies where you're watching stuff and a lot of it has to be green screen and you see Brad Pitt interacting with stuff. And let's keep in mind, what you're watching is very terrestrial things. It's not a lot of stuff that's going to blow you away like, wow, look at that spaceship, or wow, that's really exciting. This movie is very grounded in reality, despite the fact it has a very scientific sci-fi feel to it. Special effects were great. They kept me engaged. There was never any moment where I thought, oh, he's not really fighting with that, or he's not flying that spaceship, or anything like that. Special effects were great. They kept me engaged in a very slow-paced movie. So that's 2 nerd flags, one for acting, one for special effects, in Ad Astra. Now let's get on to perhaps the most important part of this movie, the story. Because based on the previews, you don't really know what the story is about. And the story was really good. It had an amazing message. Brad Pitt delivered and gave you a story that you weren't expecting. There were 2 things that I came away from in this movie, and it really made me think. I think a good movie will make you stop and think and ponder what it really was, whether it be an action movie, you think about it later, you have conversations with your friends, a drama. This movie had a great story. It had a great story. It could have literally just been Brad Pitt. All the other characters in the movie weren't necessary to deliver the message and story in this movie. This was an enthralling movie and story based on how Brad Pitt carried this movie from beginning to end, from the moment that he steps on to a ladder until the moment that the movie ends. You are engaged by this story. It takes you places that you don't expect it to go. It makes you honestly feel things that you weren't expecting to feel in a science fiction Brad Pitt movie. So one very enthusiastic nerd flag for the story in Ad Astra. It really makes you think. It has some great themes, and I encourage everyone to go out and hear the story and message that this movie has to deliver. It's something we all need to think about. So that's 3 very enthusiastic and excited nerd flags for Ad Astra. If you're going in expecting an exciting action movie, a space battle movie, that's not what you're going to get. If you're going to go in there, see a great movie, great acted, a beautiful movie with great pacing that at the end of the movie makes you contemplate a lot of things that honestly we should all think about. This is going to be the movie that you need to see. So, acting, special effects, story, strongly delivered. This space movie is not the action movie of the summer. So, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I strongly encourage you to go out and watch Ad Astra. I am NWO, we are NWO, and until next time, let your nerd flag fly.